here we go.
Welcome to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back in to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast, playoff edition. Just finish out what is Super Wildcard Weekend, not just regular Wildcard Weekend, but it was the kaiju of Wildcard Weekends, capped off with a Monday Night Football spectacular, and it was pretty cool. It was nice, almost like a holiday weekend of sorts, and it was obviously with Martin Luther King Day, and that is a big time of year for everybody. I know the NBA usually has a pretty heavy slate all day long, but it was nice to have a football game on a Monday. One last time before we get into the deep dive of the playoffs. Look to touch base with everything else going on in round 2 of the playoffs. No more bye weeks, so we're down to our final 8 teams, and we're looking forward to maybe making some more calls, just basics, nothing too deep. We're not doing first half over under fumbles in any games or anything crazy like that. We're just going to pick teams and over unders and a little bragging rights concepts on that level. Pat, how was your weekend? Obviously football deep. What were you up to there? Just watching all the money piles stack up on your side?
No, I mean, I really didn't. I didn't dabble too much this weekend in much. The Chiefs game I was pretty confident on, so I put a little down on that game and hit for a decent little amount, but nothing crazy. I ended up honestly helping my wife clean our house for most of the weekend, leading up to some of the games, and then even during that Chiefs game, it got pretty boring after like the second quarter. So watched the game, but kind of helped out the old lady as well, and got the place tidied up. But it was a fun weekend.
You got 2 kids. That'll last a week, maybe.
Oh, I think it's already messy. They're not even home from school yet. But so how'd your weekend go? I know that you worked this weekend. Did you get a chance to do any wagering, so to speak?
I did dabble. I did. Obviously, I made some calls on this, but then once you get into it, you maybe look at some of the props and different things like that. Not too bad. I would say throughout the weekend into Monday night, Daddy did okay. And I'm kind of for those of you out there that remember DuckTales, I am swimming through that pool as of right now. Did pretty well this weekend, so I'm hoping to carry on with that. But again, you can't get too cocky, because again, some of these matchups just look like whatever on paper, and you feel so strongly about them, and then something factors in. A guy could get injured mid-game. Referees are getting whistle happy, which we saw even in the first round with some of these calls that they made. So it's why it's gambling, because there's no guarantees of life except for death and taxes, I believe, and even the taxes you can kind of avoid. So I guess we could dive right in.
So let's jump into them, man. I'm excited to see. We haven't seen Green Bay or Tennessee yet in these playoffs because they both earned a first round bye. So I'm excited to see Tennessee getting Derrick Henry back. It looks like, Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay, getting into the mix here in the NFL playoffs. You ready to jump into this week's games?
I am on the diving board, ready to dive in, sir. Yes.
Don't pull a Lou Gaines.
I can't say what I want to say, but I know you can edit it out. But let's just say, sure, no problem, Pat.
So the first game of the week is against Cincinnati. This week, though, they're going to travel to Tennessee to take on the number 1 seed. Every team in all the higher seeds in the AFC won this week. So we got the 1 and 4 seeds going against each other. For me personally, I think that Cincinnati played okay versus Las Vegas last week, but they're going to need a much better performance this week against a tough playoff-built Tennessee team. They squeaked by Las Vegas with, help from that inadvertent whistle on that touchdown to Tyler Boyd. Now, it looked like Boyd was probably going to get open anyway on that play, but it did also, you could see, like if you watch the replay of that, you could see that some of the Raiders defenders sort of slowed down. One guy even pointed to the official that the whistle came from. So there was definitely something off there that, by rule, they say that play should have been, basically killed and replayed, which didn't happen. But, at this point, it is what it is. But going up against a Tennessee team that led the league in time of possession, was ninth in total plays allowed, the Bengals are really going to have to make sure that they maximize their possessions in this game. They ended up with 4 field goals in the game against the Raiders. I do not think that that's going to cut it against Tennessee. I think that if they get 4 field goals, they're going to end the game with 12 points. And I think that's the way that game's going to be. They're going to have to make sure that they get into the end zone. And against a pretty tough Tennessee defense, Tennessee is second in rushing offense and defense this year. And they're getting back the best running back in the game, obviously, in Derrick Henry. Not quite sure exactly how much he's going to play or how effective he'll be coming off of that toe injury, but they're not going to put the guy out there if he can't go. And even without Derrick Henry, the Titans still ran the ball a ton and still ran the ball effectively, even after the Henry injury. So I don't see Henry's a great addition to have back, but I don't think that Henry would even really be necessary in this game. I think Deontay Foreman handled himself well. Hilliard handled himself well when he got his opportunities. The Titans they run block well, they run the ball well, and I think it's going to be a tough day for Cincinnati. The Bengals have actually been pretty stout against the run, but I think it's going to be a tough task to stop this Tennessee rushing offense. The Bengals, other than the Philadelphia Eagles, who decided to not run the ball at all this weekend, the Tennessee Titans were right there as far as rushing yards on the season, rushing touchdowns. So, again, the Bengals are going to have their work cut out for them. With a week off, getting Derrick Henry back, having A.J. Brown and Julio Jones both healthy for this game, I just cannot see Tennessee losing this game. I do think that Cincinnati's defense is going to play well, as they have for most of the season. So I'm going to take Tennessee to win the game. I'm going to take Cincinnati with the 3.5 that they're getting. And I'm also going to take the under at 47 because I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a defensive battle in this game. How do you feel about this one?
I am almost 100% in pure agreement with you, sir. Yeah, Cincinnati, I mean, again, I didn't get to watch, but just following along as much as I could in one way, it did. It looked like they jumped out on the Raiders, and then things got slowed down a little bit for them. And for Cincinnati, they are a dynamic offense. They're a lot of fun to watch. You have players in their first, second, third year on offense. Joe Mixon's been there for a little bit longer, but this is their first taste of the playoffs. And you had a nice game at home against a weaker opponent who got right down to the end. And, Derek Carr throws that pick. If that goes a different way, we could be talking about a totally different matchup this weekend. So they didn't have it as iced as a lot of some of these other teams did through this weekend. Looking at, again, a big factor for me, and it's with Tennessee as a whole, the time of possession. They were number 1 in the league this year in time of possession. And that's where, to me, if you control the football, you really do control the game. You're looking at a team that will run the football no matter what. I mean, they'll average 2.6, 2.8, 2.9 yards a carry. They don't care. They want to make sure that they know that that they're going to keep pounding on your defense, keep your offense on the field, wear your defense out, and get their points that way. With Henry going out, Derrick Henry's still 9th in running back yardage for this season. So think about that. I mean, the guy only played half the season. So God forbid, imagine where they'd be right now if he had not gotten hurt and been there the entire season. I mean, he almost had 1,000 yards through those games when he played, which is just a scary thought to think of. So if you're getting back Derrick Henry if you're getting him back at 80, 85%, still better than most running backs in the league. Mix in the different players that they had with Deontay Foreman and the like down there that they just kind of kept rotating in to make things happen. That's what they're going to do. They're going to just kind of ground and pound. I am not surprised, again, that we agree. I think it's 23-21. I like Bengals getting plus 3.5. 23-21 Titans. I do like the under in that game as well. And I see Tennessee showing us the big reason why they are the number 1 seed in the AFC for your first game on Saturday. There will be a nightcap to Saturday. That will be those plucky San Francisco 49ers rolling into Green Bay to face the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. Of course, snow's in the forecast. Why not? It would make for an awesome game. And this is, mid to late 90s rehash for Pat and I, when back in the day, you'd have San Fran, Green Bay, and Dallas going neck and neck against each other to see who's the best team in the conference. So this harkens back to that. I think Green Bay getting a week off the heel, sit back and figure things out is definitely a plus. Aaron Rodgers at home is a huge one as well. I believe they are a pretty tough team when it comes to people trying to sneak into Lambeau and maybe try to show people who's boss. It's going to be Green Bay doing that. The Niners, the couple questions that they have. I know Fred Warner got banged up, and obviously Bosa had a concussion, and I think that does play into the health and the overall well-being of their defense. You did see them start to wear down a little bit against Dallas, and I think they expended a lot of emotional and physical energy to win that football game. Again, Dallas didn't lay down for them. It still was a very hard-fought and competitive game, to say the least. So that being said, I do like the Green Bay Packers. I would probably take the Niners getting 5.5. I think that it is still going to be a little bit of a closer game on that level. And it's to me, I'll say 21-17 Packers. So obviously the under of 47.5 to me is a bit of a factor there too. You'll have your Dr. Rogers carving everybody up, slicing and dicing, being super efficient, getting everybody involved as much as possible. Obviously Devontae Adams and he have that connection, but I don't think the Niners are going to have enough firepower. So where Jimmy G now has a back injury to go with the thumb. Just looks like things are going to fall apart a little bit health-wise for the Niners. And again, Green Bay at home, a little too tough. So I like the Packers, but probably take Niners getting 5.5. It'll be a good old-fashioned NFC playoff matchup. How about yourself, Pat?
Yeah, I was actually really impressed with the 49ers last week, holding the number one scoring offense in the league to just 17 points. And I believe if Warner and Bosa are healthy enough to play in this game, they can do the same thing to Green Bay. The biggest injury factor in this game, however, I believe is Jimmy Garoppolo, like you said, with I think it was like a back shoulder type thing. I'm not really sure exactly, where. We haven't seen anything as far as like where the injury is. It's just being reported as a back/shoulder. If it's a throwing side, obviously there's question whether he's going to play or not. I think if he's ready and available and close enough to 100%, I think the 49ers are going to hang in this game. Like you said, it's really, really tough to beat Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, especially in the playoffs. But I do think San Francisco can keep this close if Jimmy G is healthy enough to play in this game. Dallas only averaged 3.7 yards on the ground against them last week, but I believe the Packers running backs are actually even better. That 1-2 combination of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, I think, is even better than the Zeke and Tony Pollard combination. If I'm being honest, Green Bay has run the ball extremely well. They haven't run it a lot, but are very, very efficient when they run the football. I just think you got those two good running backs, a pretty solid defense in Green Bay, who's top 12 against the rush and against the pass. Green Bay also has a plus 13 turnover margin, which is tied for the second best in the league, behind only Dallas, which of course is the team that San Francisco beat last week. But, with those two running backs, with, Aaron Rodgers being arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the league, Devontae Adams, probably the best wide receiver in the league, even with the year that Cooper Kupp have. I still think Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver in the league. I just think Green Bay is poised to win this game. I do think the San Fran, again, if everyone's healthy, I do think that they're going to keep it close. I do think that they're going to, it's going to be a somewhat similar score to that Dallas game this past weekend. I don't, however, see them beating the Packers. So I'm going to take Green Bay in this one. And reluctantly, I'm taking the San Francisco 49ers with the 5.5 because I think it's going to be close. There is a chance that Green Bay blows this one wide open. It's very possible, especially at home. But I'm going to take the under because I think if that ends up being the case, I think either both teams score a decent amount of points, somewhere in that 20 to 21 range. Or if Green Bay gets out to, let's say, a 24-0 lead, something like that, and San Francisco is forced to throw the ball, which is obviously not, what they want to do offensively. I think it could be a really bad situation for San Francisco. But as long as they can run the ball, play good defense, keep the game close, I think that they have a shot in this one. But I'm going to pick the Packers and the under in this one. All right, moving on to Sunday's games. We have what I feel is probably going to be the most interesting game, I should say. I don't want to say most entertaining, but I think this game is, again, one of the games that's the hardest for me to pick. The Rams are a very tough team for me to pick. We got the Rams going into Tampa Bay Sunday at 3:00. The Rams are a 3-point underdog in that game. The over-under is at 48.5. Tampa Bay looked dominant last week against Philly, essentially shutting them out until a couple of meaningless touchdowns in the fourth quarter. But Philadelphia was just not ready for this game. I don't think that they had a good game plan. I think that even if they did have a good game plan, they would have come off of it rather quickly with the kind of start that Tampa Bay had. So it was just really difficult for them to really get anything going early in this game. Tom Brady shredded a pretty good Eagles passing defense, and basically they did whatever they wanted for most of the game. I don't think they're going to have such an easy go at it this week against LA, though. The Rams really showed why they're the scariest team in the NFC right now with their 34-11 drubbing of the Arizona Cardinals on Monday Night Football. They ran the ball well. They passed efficiently. I think Stafford was 13 out of 17 for 202 and 2 touchdowns. And they even had a defensive score. So, I mean, all phases of the game were really kicked in for the Rams. I think they're the most complete team in the NFC, offensively, defensively. I think they're the most talented team on both sides of the ball. I think, unfortunately, there are 2 better quarterbacks in the NFC, and they're going to probably end up facing both of them. But I think that this is what Matthew Stafford was brought to LA for. They knew that they had the talent to, like you said earlier, compete for and possibly win a Super Bowl if they had a better quarterback. And, Stafford proved in that game on Monday night that he's everything that they hoped that he would be. He ran the game extremely well, didn't turn the ball over, which is huge for him because Stafford is definitely known for, being a gunslinger, taking some shots, potentially turning the ball over. I think as long as he keeps that under control in this game, I think the Rams are going to have a pretty good shot at this one. Not to mention the fact that they get Cam Akers back. Now, I know he had been back for a few weeks, but in the Week 18 game, he barely touched the ball. They were, really just kind of trying to get him warmed up. But he ran the ball 17 times for 55 yards in this game and actually out-touched Sony Michel all in all in this game, which I was actually surprised about because Michel had been a pretty good running back for them leading up to this playoff run. So I think with the 1-2 punch that they have in the backfield, as well as obviously Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, Tyler Higbee, even Van Jefferson has stepped up in the times that he has had to do that this season. I just think that the Rams are too talented on both sides of the ball. We know that Tom Brady does not like pressure in his face, and the Rams have the guy in Aaron Donald that can push that offensive line back into the face of Tom Brady, make him uncomfortable. Not to mention the Bucs could potentially be down 1 or 2 offensive linemen in this game after the injuries that happened in their game against the Eagles on Sunday. So I just think it's a bad situation. I know that we talked last week and you actually picked the Eagles to win the game. I like them to keep it close just due to the fact that Tampa Bay was not coming into that game at full strength. Obviously with the running with Leonard Fournette not playing, with, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown not being there anymore. I think that, now that Tampa Bay is suffering more injuries, especially to the offensive line, which is probably the biggest thing for them with Tom Brady back there. If you can get pressure on Tom Brady, it's been proven that you can beat him. And I think the Rams are just the team to put pressure on him. So I'm picking the Rams straight up in this game. Also taking them, obviously, with the points. And I like the over in this one at 48.5 because I do think that both offenses are good enough to score points. And I think that this is going to be one of those games where the Rams, maybe squeak it out with the last second field goal, like 31-28, something in that neighborhood.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I don't. This is probably the one where we're going to disagree. Watching the Rams and watching what they did last night, they look awesome. Absolutely. Okay, let's get that out of the way. And yes, they're built to compete with an offense that's as high flying as Dallas and Tampa Bay and Kansas City and Buffalo. Absolutely. The problem for me is that, okay, little things like technically short week, Monday night, whatever. Yeah, going into Tampa, going against that Bucks team that offensively and defensively are really awesome. I mean, again, where we just said about, okay, they manhandled the Eagles. They had no business being there and all that. Eagles had one of the best offensive lines in the league all season. And they shredded them defensively. They got most of their boys back, looked obviously pretty good. And the Eagles played into that a little bit. Some of the deeper dive stuff that I looked at as far as, like you just said about pressure and getting Brady, flustered in the pocket. When it came to the Rams defensively, they were all season. Now they obviously look like they stepped it up yesterday, but it's hard not to when you're playing against a team that missing weapons and you got one of the lollipop kids back there, a quarterback. This isn't that guy. This is Tom Brady. So yeah, you have to, get him off his spot and all that. Yeah. But when it comes to creating pressure, things like that, the Rams are actually like one of the worst teams when it came to that. They got a lot of their defense through interceptions and plays down the field against teams that were gambling, but they were in the bottom 10 of pressure percentage. They were in the bottom 15 or so, 12 or so in hurry percentage. And then even blitzing, they weren't a heavy blitz team. They're only about average in the league. They were one of the least to get to the quarterback and knocking the quarterback down. This is a revenge game for Tom Brady. We know how he likes to get revenge on people. Earlier this year, week 3, when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went to Los Angeles and Tom Brady threw for 432 yards on 55 attempts, 41 completions, but only 1 touchdown. Matt Stafford, on the other hand, did have a game, 27-38, 343, and 4 touchdowns. Looking back at that game, field goals, they missed one, which would have made it a 1-score game. Who knows how that would have played out. The Rams had the ball for a little bit longer, not by much. It was almost an even split. Tampa Bay got beat up by penalties. They had 7 penalties for 41 yards, which doesn't help. Other than that, most statistics were fairly the same across the board. The one that did kind of step in a little bit back in the beginning of the year, Tampa nearly didn't run the ball nearly as much as they do now. Obviously, Fournette's a little banged up, but we saw Keyshawn Vaughn look like an actual NFL running back the other day. So there's that. I don't know. I mean, I'll take it all day that the Rams are probably the stronger, more healthy. I don't even know how to put it. Like, I know that they're pretty much right there with them. But at the end of the day, I would say that it's going to be Tom Brady and the Bucks, 31-30, high scoring over City. Rams still get there with the 3 points. I just don't think they're going to have just enough to get past Brady, the Buccaneers, possibly even the referees. You never know nowadays. But yeah, a close one, a barn burner, a Donnybrook, a Broody Ha, 31-30 Tampa Bay over the Rams this Sunday. You can put that on the board. Finally, we're going to go into our nightcap for Sunday. Well, it's more like a early evening cap, I guess, roughly 6:30 p.m. I'm looking at. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. We're getting into that sassy stuff now. That would be the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Buffalo coming off of throttling the New England Patriots. Kansas City coming off of a beatdown of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're looking at Buffalo getting 2.5 points. Chiefs are the home favorites slightly. And that's kind of a tell a little bit there. And the over-under is 54.5. These 2 games on Sunday look to be basically the dream matchups for this league. 2 high-powered offenses in one game, 2 high-powered offenses in the other. Buffalo, what they just did and what they've been doing over the last couple of weeks, where they kind of circled the wagons. And as we know, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. But all kidding aside, they really have found a way to balance their offense out. Their running game is getting involved, which is completely wiping out defenses, and they have nothing to do to stop that offense. Josh Allen can run and throw. Devin Singletary has become a legitimate thing. You got Stephon Diggs, you got Dawson Knox, you got Sanders, you got Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie. You have all these guys out there that are just making plays, and they're just killing it. And then by the way, their defense is the best in the league. I know Kansas City is a good team, and They're a 1A to their 1 when it comes to the offense. And this is going to be a heavyweight matchup. This is Ali Frazier for this season, to say the least. At the end of the day, the Buffalo Bills are going to win this game. And they're going to win it because their defense is going to be a little bit better. But Kansas City's defense has stepped up from what they were at the beginning of the year, but they are going to have no match for this offense whatsoever. I think that the Buffalo Bills are, they're not going to maybe go as crazy as they did versus the New England Patriots. But looking at this game right now, I am going to call for a 37-34, put it down, Buffalo Bills over the Kansas City Chiefs, 37-34, which would definitely cover that over. Again, these offenses are crazy and the defenses are great, but Buffalo's is better. Kansas City's not going to be able to stand up to them. But I will give Kansas City credit for points coming back at the end and almost making it a game. But Buffalo, they look to be a magical team this year, and I think they're going to continue their run to the Super Bowl.
I completely agree. I picked the Buffalo Bills before the season to be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl. I had mentioned on one of our previous podcasts about them. We were talking about, I think it was a start-sit episode where we were talking about Devin Singletary, and I said that I believe that the Bills need to get their running game together and they need to figure it out before the playoffs start, because once the playoffs hit, you're not going to be able to just drop back and throw against everybody, 50 times and win playoff games. Teams are too good in the playoffs to allow that. And the Bills have done that. I mean, they have stuck with one guy, Devin Singletary. They are giving him the ball. Get 2 touchdowns against the Patriots in their game on Saturday. And, I mean, Buffalo looked like, a complete team finally. Aside from a 1-second possession at the end of the first half and a minute and 44 seconds that they ran off the clock at the end of the game, that they were just basically kneeling the ball. They're the only 2 drives that the Buffalo Bills had that they did not score touchdowns on. It was the most impressive offensive playoff game in NFL history. Now, do I see that happen again against Kansas City? I don't. Basically due to the fact that I do think Kansas City is going to be able to move the ball. I do think that they're going to be able to score. Buffalo's defense is incredible. I just think that, obviously Kansas City's offense is much better than New England's. I think that's going to slow the game down a little bit. But I do see both of these teams being able to put points on the board. Kansas City, again, like Tampa Bay, they beat up on a pretty bad 7th seed this past week against the Steelers. Patrick Mahomes he did his Mahomian thing, throwing for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns in that game. I think we all pretty much saw that coming. I mean, I don't know too many people who were picking the Steelers to win that game or even really make it close. We did not, however, see the dismantling of the New England Patriots by the Buffalo Bills the way that game turned out. That was a huge surprise to me. I did think the Bills were going to win that game. I didn't think it was going to be by the landslide that it was. They always say it's not the best teams that win the Super Bowl. It's the team that's playing the best at the end of the season. And I think over the past few weeks and leading into this first, super wild card weekend, I mean, I don't want to sell it short. I think the Buffalo Bills to me, they look like the team to beat in the playoffs, period. I mean, if the Bills were playing any other team in the playoffs this week coming up, I don't care, Packers, Rams, whoever, Bucks, Tom Brady, I would pick the Buffalo Bills. I think they looked incredible. This is not just based off of the game against New England. It's based off of the fact that they showed up in the biggest spot on both sides of the ball and look like they are on a mission to get to and win a Super Bowl. And so I'm taking the Buffalo Bills, like you, to win this game outright, even though that they're an underdog. And I'm taking the over. I have it at 34-31. So also a very similar score to what you have. I'm telling you right now, I'm already going to pick the Bills to win next week. I don't care who they're playing. I just think that they're that.
Well, that'll do it for next week too, folks. We're
unless a major, like if Josh Allen gets hurt or something major happens to where the Bills suffer some catastrophic injuries or something crazy. But at the pace they're going, I don't think that there's any team in the league as good on both sides of the ball. As a matter of fact, I think that the teams from each conference that have the most talent on both sides of the ball are both very well coached. And I believe that's the Buffalo Bills and the LA Rams. And I'm just putting it out there now. They're my picks for the playoffs. I do a playoff challenge on NFL.com, and my lineup is literally stacked with Bills and Rams players because I feel like those are the two teams. To me, it feels like that's where this season almost has been heading from the very beginning. And I truly believe that's where it's going to end up.
Can't say there's any flaws too much in that. Like, yeah, you're looking at two of the most dynamic teams, and league would love that, to get Bills Mafia and their fan base going, get the TV market going with the LA, all through the playoffs. Obviously, the Super Bowl being the game that it is. We'll wait to see how this weekend goes. You never know. Like you said, injuries could come in and play a factor, and obviously crush our picks and the hopes and dreams of those. Some of those teams involved of the last 8 NFL teams. So it sounds like we pretty much agree on everything except for the Rams-Bucks game. You hike the Rams. I will go with with Tampa Bay, and yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. It's a little bit easier now to see how some of these teams are playing and get into that Final Four. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to divisional playoffs and then setting the table for conference championships in a week, which we will talk about. I know with this episode, we're going to have a little something extra. Pat, you want to mention that?
Yeah. So we mentioned last week that we have an interview with a fantasy football analyst that Scott and I both respect, and that'll be coming up, right after this, after our picks are done. I'm not going to go into the whole intro because I'll introduce him before we get the interview started, but definitely something to stay tuned for. Really funny guy and a really smart fantasy football analyst. So stay tuned for that in the second part of the podcast here. Anything before we sign off for this one?
Again, down the road, we're going to continue to go through our playoff matchups. Obviously, the interview with Jake, we're looking forward to getting that out there for you. He was a great guy to talk to and kind of pick his brain a little bit to see if we're doing things the right way and just, what the whole community's about out there for fantasy football. And then, down the road, we're going to continue on. We'll keep reviewing picks that we made on players through the year, get back into the fantasy side of things, start to look for things to touch base with in the off season that will factor into some fantasy relevant things down the road. For those of you that are out there right now, I'm sure you're probably already mock drafting away and seeing all the 2022 way too early predictions. And the only reason they're way too early is because they have to sprinkle in some of the college talent that's going to fall through in the upcoming weeks when the draft happens. And then obviously with free agency and possible trades, you'll have some new faces and new places that puts them in theory, a much more competitive and positive situation for some of those guys that have maybe been sitting behind a player, playing second fiddle, the second or third wide receiver that has the talent and moves to a different team and a different layout. Suddenly that guy gets a lot more targets and is a lot more involved in an offense, things of that nature. We know there's going to be a quarterback carousel and the coaching moves that are out there that are going to play into how some of these teams address offensive issues that maybe they had through the season, which is why they had the openings in the first place. Just over the Raiders actually let Mike Mayock, their general manager, the last 3 seasons, he went goodbye. There's still, a few other shoes that may drop out there, both in the front office and in the coaching ranks. And again, a lot of that does play into what happens to these teams in the offseason, player situations, trades, draft picks, and so on. So all that will get touched on. And again, Pat and I will try to keep you in the loop through the off season. And before you know it, it's going to be June, July, and we'll be talking about nice weather and training camps and, things of that nature. So it won't take long. We'll get you back on the fantasy horse before you know it, but we're enjoying just kind of deep diving into the playoffs and we appreciate everybody out there listening to the podcast. Pat and I are trying hard to make it fun and entertaining and informative for everyone out there. Hopefully some of these picks make you, let's just say you win the argument with your friends. They are for entertainment purposes only, no real live wagering being done. And beyond that, we'll talk to you next week, folks.
So we're super excited to have our first guest ever on the podcast. I don't know if he knows he's our first guest ever, but I guess he probably does now. He's definitely one of my favorite follows on fantasy football Twitter. He does all kinds of hilarious videos and songs and impressions, everything kind of with a fantasy football twist to it. He's the co-host of Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football and the Ball Blast Football podcast. He's also a weekly contributor to Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life newsletter. You can follow him on Twitter at Jake Trowbridge. We'd like to welcome Jake Trowbridge to the 9 route. Jake, welcome, man. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I had no idea that I was your first. I would have prepared a much more grandiose speech, something. I would have brought gifts if I had known, balloons. But that's exciting.
Well, I didn't want to make it seem like a big deal because I didn't want to make you nervous. I know how camera shy you are, so we didn't want you to bail on us because you got a little nervous about being the first. I know how I was.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Awesome. I'm terrified, by the way. You dropped on me now. Now it's just all downhill from here.
Well, here's the good part. See, we don't do anything live. So anything that you say that just sounds completely ridiculous, we can just edit out and not, post. So you're good there. You don't have to worry about it.
You edit out all my stuff? Come on, man.
You've listened to it. You know that most of your stuff doesn't make it.
Oh, well, I listened to some of it. I know what I said. I repeat myself too much. It's fine.
All right, Jake. So again, welcome to the show. Thank you again for joining us. I personally, as far as this goes, I reached out to you on Twitter. You responded and agreed to come on the show. And again, thank you for that. And I was just really interested in, being someone who has very little to no talent of my own, people who are talented and who have ideas and kind of see things the way you do always interest me. And so I wanted to kind of just ask you a couple of questions and kind of pick your brain a little bit because you're really interesting as far as not putting out the normal, I don't want to say normal, but the more common fantasy football content. You like to take things to sort of a more of an entertainment level. And that's something that I really appreciate about you and something that some things that I wanted to ask you as far as that, field goes. So before we get into that, just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, married, kids, anything like that.
My name's Jake. I grew up in the Midwest. So I have this Midwestern sensibility of nobody helped me do anything. And also, if I ask you for help, I'm immediately sorry afterwards, and I will pay you back 20-fold kind of thing. But growing up in the Midwest, so I'm from Iowa originally. Then I hopped across the border to Wisconsin to go to school to obtain my very useful journalism degree, which I, of course, have made an abundant use out of ever since. But the thing about growing up in the Midwest, I think in terms of fantasy football, and we were talking before we came on, one of the videos I just made was about trades, sending trade offers. I'm always terrified I'm going to send the worst trade offer. And I think every trade offer I send is garbage because I'm from the Midwest and nothing I send is good enough. But yeah, I grew up in Iowa. I am now married to my lady. We've been together 16 years, coming up in February here.
Awesome.
Just got married this year, finally. We took our time getting to this stage. It took 15 years to get to this stage, but we made it. So that's all that matters. We're not a child household. We're just not those people. We're a pet household. We enjoy pets. So that's kind of where we put our time and energy into. And it's why
kids.
I have time to do stupid things like make videos, because I don't have children.
No, that's great. I mean, kids, pets are all kind of the same. As long as you feed them and keep them alive, most people don't bother you at that point.
Yeah, they're like a gremlin, right? That's what I've heard. Can't get them wet. You can't feed them after a certain hour. But other than that, you're good.
So how long have you been doing the fantasy football thing? I know, you said you went to school, got a degree. Did you sort of always want to get involved in fantasy football, or is that something that just kind of fell into your lap?
Yeah, No, I stumbled into fantasy football. I fashioned myself to be a writer of some kind. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna whatever field, whatever subgenre of writing I can get into, that's gonna be my goal. And then fantasy football fell into my lap about 7 years ago, I believe. So my neighbor, my good friend, and the co-host of Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football, Dustin Luntz, we've been friends long before we started the podcast. And he and a close group of my buddies had an ongoing home league for quite some time. And I was always interested only in the way that like we go out to the bar and they keep talking about fantasy football. And like, I just had to learn enough to be able to contribute to the conversation and not be bored out of my mind, which is what I did. And then an opening popped up in their league. I was like, all right, let me get in on this action so I can fit in with the group here. And I've been doing fantasy football ever since. I started writing about it shortly thereafter. I was like, okay, here's a niche I can apply this journalism degree to. And then quickly after that, I was like, I don't want to write anymore. So let me figure out what else I could do in the industry that doesn't involve writing. And then I started the podcast. Me and Dustin started our Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football podcast 3 years ago. And it's been a roller coaster ever since.
That's great, man. I feel like that seems to be not the same path that Scott and I took. We've been doing the same league together for years, probably since I guess high school, right? 20 something years now. I've been
drinking since high school. Yeah.
But as far as doing the podcast, we're kind of on the same page, which is just something that we decided, you know what, this is something that we really enjoy doing, and something that, as far as him and I being good friends and just wanting to keep in touch with each other through the week, and whenever we get together, even in the off season, we talk fantasy football anyway. So we figured, well, why not do it and record it and see if people will listen to us? Who knows? But that's great.
Yeah, that's the first step, isn't it? It's just like, not even is this something that I want to do or something that I can make a career out of or any of that. It's really just, will anybody listen to me if I do this? And I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but for me, it was like posting that first episode was a little terrifying. So it's like, there could be no response, which is fine. But God forbid that there's a response and it's negative. I don't know what I would have done. So it was kind of nice to be tinkering in obscurity. What are the words? Some non-journalism person help me out here. Is that the word I'm looking for? Obscurity, I think.
I think obscurity is the common phrase, but I think absurdity probably fits what we do a little bit better.
Sure. Yeah, everybody thinks you're crazy for being in fantasy football. So, might as well.
True.
Like you say, the spouses, at least yours is helping you.
That's true. She's a helpful cameraman. She does some of the legwork. So yeah, she's a good egg.
Well, again, you finally did marry her. So again, you guys have a lot going on there. So it's good. I mean, it's good when you're spouses. I know Pat's, all kidding aside, I know she helps. She decorated your whole office, got you set up in there. Mine just kind of grunts and curses at the Eagles games. So, nothing too crazy. We're over here, Philadelphia area. So got to do what you got to do. But no, it's good to have people supporting you. That's one thing, like you said, with getting the ball rolling off the ground. We were nervous, we're good friends. We can talk about it just like we're talking with you right now. Hey, we have something in common, but who the hell is going to listen to us? And, you're putting yourself out there. You don't know if it's going to be crazy after the first week. So, again, we do see that, maybe we have a shot, a couple people, hey, you guys helped us out. Pat, you just said some guy in your work actually listened to our podcast and thanked us for kind of giving them a hand with tips and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's nice to know at least there's one listener out there that isn't like your kid who's going, I love you, Dad, and here you go. Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, though. You got somebody, you helped that person with your podcast. And that's the big crux of it all. So that's pretty cool when you get those kind of responses.
Absolutely. So getting back to, what you do specifically on Twitter with your videos and things like that. I'm curious how you come up with those ideas for those things. Is it just something that just pops into your head, or, do you have like a brainstorming session where you go through that? And is that just you, as far as like, this is stuff that I want to put out because I think it'll be funny or it'll be interesting, or is it sort of like marketing for your podcast, or what's the deal with it, with like behind the videos?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's just it entertains me. Like, I think it's fun to do that kind of stuff because I'm a man child, so I think it's really entertaining to play dress up and sing songs in front of a camera. But it started initially was like, I think for a lot of people, the pandemic sort of opened up this world of boredom, and then what do I do to combat it? And what I did to combat it initially, where all these videos really started from, was I just started doing impressions and posting them on Twitter, like little ones, like 5-second impressions, and I post them to Twitter just to kind of like make myself laugh. And people seemed to respond to it. I was like, okay, and then it kind of kept growing, and I had to do more of them. And then for my podcast, I was like, oh, I'll make a video to kind of promote it, like you were talking about there, Pat. Like, how can I use this as kind of a marketing tool? So I made sort of a promo video for Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football, kind of like a It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia parody. Yeah, there you go. You can appreciate the Philliness at least. And I did my best Charlie Day impersonation and just made like a minute-long advertisement for the podcast that way. But I didn't think like, oh, now I'm going to, be a marketing dude. I just happened to do it for our podcast and occasionally would keep doing that. And then, I don't know, it blew up. And one day I was going to make it as a video for the podcast. And honestly, I said to myself, I was like, I don't know. We don't have enough viewers for the podcast. I want more people to see it. So I just posted onto my personal Twitter. It was a Beastie Boys music video parody. It was the first one of those I'd ever done. And it was just a lot of fun to do. It's something different. I don't know if you guys feel this, but I get bogged down with sort of the tedium of fantasy football sometimes. And it feels like everybody's kind of talking about the same thing, and people tend to get a little grumpy about fantasy football sometimes. I was like, let's break it up a little. So that was my impetus, and that's still why I do it. Like, let's break up some of this business over here.
So which one of your videos, like, is there one that maybe, I guess, sort of put you on the map, so to speak, as far as, recognition, or because I've seen a bunch of them and I think they're all good, but, like what was the first one that sort of, was it that first one that you did, or was there a one that sort of catapulted you to Twitter stardom?
I don't know which the first one where it's like, oh, that really unlocked something. Because it's just been, I don't know, it's been a little steady progression of people paying more and more attention to it. I think the one that kind of got everybody maybe more on board was a Backstreet Boys parody that I did. And, because it's the Backstreet Boys. Everybody knows a Backstreet Boys song. Like all the other stuff I did was obscure, and that one was not like that at all. So I think, it was probably that Backstreet Boys parody video I did. But the other thing people seem to like is I posted a request or like a call out on Twitter. I was like, hey, send me your league roster, and I'll basically make a trash talk video of it as a celebrity of your choosing. And I thought great. Like 4 people would respond. I was like, well, this will help me get through this slow work day. And then like dozens and dozens and dozens of people responded, and they just kept coming. And I kind of opened up a can of worms. But that was the thing where people now will still make those requests, even though I don't put it out there on Twitter for them to do that. They still send me DMs like, hey, man, could you like rag my league mate as Bill Burr or something? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
That's great, man. That is, like I said, I personally enjoy all of your videos, everything that you put out. So I do appreciate what you do. If not that you probably don't hear this from others, but like I said, you hit the nail on the head when you said the tedium of fantasy football. I love fantasy football. And obviously that's the reason that Scott and I started this podcast, but you're right. Like sometimes I sit down on Monday morning and, I get ready to start going through everything. And I'm like, oh man, man, I got 4 hours of, combing through statistics and, all this. And as much as I do love the game and as much as I love doing the podcast, you're right. It sometimes can be, it can be tough at times for sure. But since this is a fantasy football podcast, we do have a few fantasy football questions for you, if you don't mind asking.
Let's do it.
Answering, I should say. So, what do you think is the best or worst call that you've made this season so far, as far as like, draft this guy, don't draft this guy, or potential trades or whatever? What's your give us your best and your worst if you can think of it.
I think the best is easy because I have so few of them. My best call for this last season. I was a big Deebo Samuel guy coming into the year. I believed in him over Brandon Ayuk, and that definitely bore fruit. So I was Team Deebo. We had plenty of conversations on our podcast about it. My co-host was actually even higher on him than I was, but I made a really nice trade with him in one of my dynasty leagues with a different co-host from the Ball Blast podcast. Sent away a first, got Deebo and a second back in return. She's been regretting that ever since. I've been loving it ever since. So I think Deebo was my best call for this year. When it comes to the worst, it's just so many options. I think, though, if I had to pinpoint one, I was really low on Joe Burrow. I was nervous about his injury. I was nervous about the offensive line being able to hold up for the entire year. And I was an idiot. I was a fool. I was like, he can't throw the ball downfield. It's going to be all dump offs to Tyler Boyd. So wheels up on Tyler Boyd. And then all he did for the entire year was chuck these lovely bombs down the field to Jamar Chase, to T. Higgins, and, finished as a top 12 guy, I believe. So pretty nice.
Leagues. I know you just mentioned a couple. How many? I know we have people that listen, and you do too. Some people are just getting into fantasy football. It's my first year. I'm breaking the ice. Or you have somebody who's I'm in 25 leagues, and I'm maybe joining another Superflex Dynasty Emperor League, and obviously there's everywhere in between. How many leagues are you in right now? And I guess on that level, just so everybody else that's in them understands it, is it fun, or is it more work to try to attend to them all? Obviously, being in different podcasts, I'm sure you're automatically locked in on that level.
I'm in too many leagues, or yes. I should say I was in too many leagues this last year. I am not somebody who enjoys the thrill of setting 35 lineups every week. That's never going to be my bag. I don't find that productive use of my time. And also, I just don't have an easy way to do that. Maybe some people have it set up really well where it's almost kind of automatic. Maybe they program them all so they can set them all, within 10 minutes or something. I can't do that. I don't have that capability. I was in 14 this year for actual leagues. And then, there's always some best ball for listeners. That's basically you draft early on and then you never have to set a lineup. It automatically chooses the top scoring players from your roster to fit in after the fact, which is great. You just get your top scoring players and you never have to look at your lineups. And that's amazing. I recommend doing a lot of those if you're going to be a lot of leagues.
The Jeff Bezos lineup. Yeah. Where you just set it and forget it. Yeah. And walk away.
Absolutely. That's what I'd be after. And that's what I'm planning to do more this year. This past year, there was a lot of actual, I had to spend time every week with waivers and lineups and all that. And it's fine. But yeah, I typically like to keep it a little bit more trim. 8 or 9 leagues sounds good to me. Anything beyond that, it's just too much. Sure.
No, I think that's what's, technically, I guess, to say keeping us in business. But you run out of concepts. You overthink it. Like you said, the Charlie Day with the charts on the board, like you're trying to figure out, well, okay, this guy in this league and these totals and these many targets and all that stuff. So, I think people do tend to maybe bite off more than they can chew, and then it turns into work. Obviously, there could be, some monetary benefits to certain leagues that keeps people involved in them, chasing them down the road. But definitely, I had you pegged. I had over under 15, so I was right there with the 14. I'm good for that. At least I know I'm good. I'm only in 3. I know Pat's in more, so I try to keep it fun. Is there one in particular that is your, like, obviously you're in as many as you are, but is there one that maybe your original league with your co-host that you're just like, you know what? I don't give a crap about anything else. I got to win this league no matter what. Is there one that really is like your heart? Is it that original league?
It is that. And I think that's true for a lot of people. There's something about that initial home league, the one where you've been in for the longest. It may not even be the biggest buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
And that one's close, but I don't think it's the biggest buy-in, but it doesn't matter. It's so much of a pride thing when you know the people that well. And it is, I forego a lot of other, like I will focus on that lineup like an insane person. Like what's that movie with Russell Crowe where he's writing on the windows all the time?
A Beautiful Mind.
Yeah.
That's what I do with that league. And it's almost never beneficial, by the way. I always overthink that league. But I put my heart and soul into that. It annoys me every time. Like this year, I had posted something on Twitter. I thought I did the best draft of my life in this league. But it is one of those that weirdly penalizes quarterback. It's crazy. It's like -5 for an interception, -3 for a fumble, another -3 if it's a recovery, -3 for a sack, like all this crazy.
Oh, yeah. The minutia. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And, I didn't give it enough thought. That part of it. And so now I'm tainted for this year. I have like the best other roster I've ever drafted, save for QB. That just screwed me over. And so I'm going to have to live with that forever now.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Like you say, like our original home league that we were in, it's, Pat and his 3 brothers, myself, and a ton. It's mostly all family. So it's nonstop, like ball busting throughout the year. And the draft is, it's like the big Labor Day party draft that we do and all this stuff. So, a lot of times, like you say, the other ones, you lose them. You say, maybe even a work league, you're not too sweating. But yeah, those originals, those close to homes are the ones that you take to the grave, I think, year after year, because you don't want to be the guy in the Waffle House sitting there for 24 hours or a chicken suit on the side of the road. Definitely, when it comes to that, I know some of the penalties are getting a little extreme nowadays. That'll be the next level, but definitely we hear you on that. As far as leagues go too, like you just talked about best ball. And obviously there's half PPR, which personally I just think is a joke, but it is what it is. I get it. But do you have a format that, like you say, is maybe your favorite or for somebody who's just getting into it or even starting a league that you would say is, hey, we think this is like the best way to go. I mean, I know like a 1-point PPR is now a point like a standard when it comes to leagues and stuff like that. But you're talking dynasty, keepers, super flex. People hear that and they get freaked out. Now, I don't know all that stuff, but what's your favorite to play, let alone in your home league or just overall?
I won't shake a stick at almost any of these league settings, and I think people should play however you want to play. But if I had my druthers, if I had my personal preference going forward, I would only want to play in super flex leagues. Like I'm obsessed with the idea of having the option to start 2 quarterbacks in your league, because I actually think it opens up more avenues, especially in dynasty format. I love dynasty. The home league I mentioned, that's a redraft league. It's one of the only redraft leagues that I still do, save for maybe somebody invites me to a charity league or something that's redraft. Fine, I'll totally do that. If I had to pick one, it's going to be dynasty. It's going to be super flex. Quarterbacks are the most important position in football. I still believe that. And so I want that reflected in my league. And I think, being able to find 2 good quarterback options and not just being able to go and get a usable or pretty damn solid quarterback off of the waivers every week and stream that position and just rotate them out. I think there's something to be said for having to kind of plant your flag on these guys in the dynasty leagues. And so I definitely enjoy that. But like I said, whoever comes calling with whatever kind of league format, I'm probably going to join.
Yeah. It's like, I'll think about it, and you get home, you're like, yeah, I'll definitely jump in that. No, I agree. I know Pat and I would just well, I did it for the first time. I got into a super flex in our home league. I've been banging the drum for years because, yeah, it feels like quarterbacks get wasted and they've become a stream option. And yeah, like you said, it's a passing league. It's a quarterback driven league. And yeah, like we have 12 teams in our league. So the top 12, and you got a lot of guys on the fringe that, could make or break certain things, make it more interesting and get involved. And, some people are more worried about, oh, let's get rid of kickers. And it's like, who cares? At that point, it's like, yeah, I'd rather just stack the points up. I want to have like 1,000 points to win my league at the end of the season with everything. I don't want to sit there middling around and just waste it. So, but at the end of the day, you get the itch. And like you said, it's a PPR. How many teams? Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll jump in. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. No, I know it's the itch. And again, it's guys and gals, it's young and old. And I think everybody has definitely gotten involved in fantasy football to that point where, they'll learn all the new ones and, you learn stuff new every day when it comes down to it. So I totally agree with you on that.
For sure. Yeah. And by the way, if there's people out there listening that say, oh, I should invite Jake to join my league now that he said that, please don't do that to me, because I'm going to have to accept it and I'm not going to enjoy it about 6 months after the fact.
That's at Jake Trowbridge.
So like I said, we didn't want to keep you for very long. We really appreciate you coming on the show. Before we let you go, is there any other spaces that you're on, any other things that you're doing that you want to tell our listeners about that they can go check out and find you in the interwebs?
Yeah, I'm hanging around. I'm out there. If you're on Twitter, definitely follow me at Jake Trowbridge. I try and keep it as entertaining for you as I possibly can. And if you like silly podcasts with drinking in the title, then at Drinking Fantasy on Twitter is your go-to.
All right, man. That's great. And like I said, I want to thank you again. Thank you 40 times already, but we do really appreciate you coming on the show. And
Pat, he said he was married already. Come on, take it easy.
Hey, how are you at operating a camera though, Pat? I don't know. There might be some room here.
Well, if you take into consideration that we do nothing on camera on our podcast or on our YouTube page yet, you can see that's where my skill level is at right about now with camera work. So,
all right, then Scott's right. The wife has it locked up. Move along.
But I'll keep you in the bullpen. Keep your arm warm. Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, again, thanks, Jake. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. And like I said, we look forward to more great fantasy football content from you in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, guys.
Jake, thanks a lot, man. We'll take it easy. Enjoy yourself. Watch that national title game, pal. Enjoy it.
Done and done.
We'd like to sincerely thank you for listening to the show. You can follow us on Twitter at the 9Route1 and at Scott from Delco. We put out a lot of funny and informative information on there. Our email address, if you'd like to email the show, is the 9routeFFB at gmail.com. Make sure to click the little plus wherever you're listening to follow the show. And if you like what we do, please leave us a review. Good luck this week, and we'll be back next week with more fantasy football info to take your team deep here on the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.